Dale here in Cessanadilla, Romania. Hope I can get through this quickly. Got my bottle of water here. They've been doing some work in the house here. It's dusty and it's hot. So in the 90s today, no air conditioning. So I may have to resort to my water here every once in a while. But let me get on here with what I'm to go on with. Jeremiah 17:9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things," and this is the English Standard Version, "and desperately sick. Who can understand it?" Some versions talk about it being wicked, and other versions talk about being incurable. And the word that's translated used there carries all those connotations. There is a big debate going on in the United States right now, not only there but around the world. And if you think it's a political debate, I mean it is a political debate, but if you think that's all it is, you're greatly mistaken. It goes much deeper than that. This is a worldview debate. It's a Christian worldview versus the world's worldview, man's worldview of himself. And that's what we're looking at right quick here. In the 1700s, there was a man, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, born 1712, died 1778. A lot of his writings were instrumental and had a big impact on the French Revolution. And also Karl Marx drew a lot from his writings. A lot of us think we go back and look at Karl Marx was where socialism started. Well, he did have one of the biggest proponents of it and then gave it a boost, but actually many of his ideas came from this man. And I'll read just a little about him right quick. But we see that just a cursory look at this man's writings revealed the same poor and twisted reasoning skills possessed by many of today's socialists, including those serving in the halls of our Congress. He is often contradictory and irrational, and yet he is pronounced in most of our universities as one of the world's great thinkers. I mean, when I get through, if you think that, I don't know, there's not much hope for you. Rousseau saw an ad for an easy essay contest asking a simple question: has science made us better or worse, more or less moral? As Rousseau tells it, he fell asleep in the park, had a vision, and started to write his discourse on the sciences and arts. He won the contest and instantly rose to fame. His basic thesis: man is naturally good, and anything that is not natural and has corrupted us from this natural state. His conclusions go against the Bible, as I just read Jeremiah there, the biblical teachings and principles, and our logic. And many professing Christians have accepted them as gospel. We'll look at some of the more controversial of his teachings and what he's had to say, but you'll see the contradiction between reality or the biblical worldview and what man's worldview is in humanity. Physical punishment, start off with here. Physical punishment does not lead to rehabilitation or education. We've been going towards that route for a long time. Well, this is where it originated from. Not only does the Bible teach just the opposite, I can personally testify that is surely false. Because like millions of other children, I was disciplined with corporal punishment, and it did really rehabilitate me from my errant ways. And if it was administered properly, it had the same effect on those millions of other people, billions of others probably now, that's been used on since the beginning of time. They will testify to the same thing, many of them. Now I'm talking about discipline, not beatings. There is a difference. You spank a child to correct for its self-correction, but for its own good. You beat a child because they did something that embarrassed you, or as a parent, or something along that line. Sometimes we punish for the wrong reason, but it should always be for the child's good. Crime is created by social injustice, and we'll see as we read here, and I'll hurry through. It's one thing after another causes crime, according to Rousseau. The late Chuck Colson spoke often against this lie. Many people live under social injustice and yet are model citizens. And even if everything were perfect, there will always be those who want more than their fair share and who are willing to steal and even murder to get it. I mean, that's a fact of life. You can't get around it, even though people somehow manage to, I guess, come up with these crazy ideas. Again, he says crime is created by material inequality and injustice. In parentheses, distribution of property. In short, everything, he says, everything I saw became for my heart an object of longing simply because I was deprived of it all. That Rousseau admits to his own evil in his own heart and tries to blame it on social issues. He doesn't even recognize it. The problem was not that there was something that he couldn't have. The problem is that he wanted something so badly that he couldn't have. That points to the real issue. All behavior, he says, as well as Locke's human understanding or knowledge, is learned. Okay, he says all is learned. Sexual perversion, criminal lying, and criminal behavior. Another lie, and it's just so illogical. And this is another very provable lie. Who has ever taught a newborn or 1 or 2 year old to pitch temper tantrum when they don't get what they want? You don't have to do that. Well, I've never seen it had to be done, but it goes on all the time. We never have to teach children how to share, do we? It just comes naturally to them, I suppose. Well, according to Rousseau, that's the way it should be. But I've never seen a child yet that you didn't have to teach how to share. Some do it better than others, but usually they have to be encouraged to share. No, they're selfish. Property. And then exploiting human labor to grow one's property is the source of social inequality and in turn of all mankind's social ills. Well, the thing is, if you have a property and you're exploiting human labor, well, if you're making slaves out of them, that's exploiting human labor. If you're paying them a wage, that's not. But I think that's where he's going with this. But here it is, the socialist or so-called progressive agenda. If your neighbor is lazy and has no ambition, then you should not make him feel bad by obtaining more than he, but rather be satisfied with attaining no more than what he has, what your neighbor has. And then he says the less civilized man is the happier, nobler, and more peaceful man. Maybe he should go down to the jungles of Africa and among some of the cannibal tribes, see how happy their victims are. I don't know. Evidently, he didn't travel much. Thus, closer relationships to the natural world may offer a route back towards original goodness. That baffles me. I don't understand if man is really inherently good, how can he go back to original goodness if he's still good? And I do believe in original goodness. God created man. He said all he created was good. But sin came into the world, and you and I and every human being since that time have inherited the heart and the nature of Adam. Consider a relationship to the Genesis story of Adam and Eve and how knowledge is a source of sin and evil. Suppose that's the reason they try to keep our students ignorant of the truth in our universities. They don't want to teach a whole lot other than propaganda anymore, it doesn't seem. But he fails to understand here that Adam and Eve ate of the tree and sinned before they had consumed the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So how did knowledge cause their actions? Again, his twisted reasoning is just, I cannot follow. I don't know how anybody can. They had to make a decision to eat of the fruit before they actually consumed the fruit, and then the knowledge that they gained called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Oh well, under existing conditions, a man left to himself from birth would be a more monster than the rest. Again, that says just the opposite of what he's trying to say, and has been saying. If a man's left to himself, then if he's inherently good, then he should be way above everybody else. Perfect, so to speak. And then he says, use the term under existing conditions. If man's left himself, I don't know what existing conditions any other conditions has to do with anything. The subjective nature of knowledge, true knowledge, is emotional and based upon individual personal experience. Each man is an individual, unlike any other. Thus, truth is subjective. You wonder where that started coming from 20, 30, 40 years ago and got into our educational system? Here it is. Rousseau was against land ownership also, another socialist idea. Now let's see what God says about man's inherent goodness. And we've already looked a little bit. Romans 3:4 said, let God be true, though everyone a liar. John 3:19, and this is the judgment that light has come into the world, and people love the darkness rather than the light, because their works were evil. Romans 3:9 through 18, for we have already charged that both Jews and Greeks are under sin. As it is written, none is righteous, no, not one. No one understands, no one seeks for God, and all have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. Their venom of asp is under their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood, and their paths are ruin and misery. And the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Boy, you can read that and just look at the rhetoric today coming from the news media and the Antifa people, the hate that's been spewed out there. So here's the good news, though. Ezekiel 36:26 says, and I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. So you can attain and regain that inherent goodness in man if you'll come to Jesus Christ, because then he comes into your life and controls. Not entirely. I mean, it's not like you become an automaton, then. That's not what I'm talking about. But yet he helps you to overcome the evils that's out there. And then Jeremiah 24:7 says, I will give them a heart to know that I am the Lord, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God. For they shall return to me with their whole heart. Day or little. Choice is yours. Do you remain as you are with that evil heart, or you can let God put a new one in? It's what the New Testament talks about, being born again. Thank you.